Dobry den, and that is where my Russian or my Ukrainian must end. So I have to start with the inevitable apology, and I'm sure you can guess what I'm apologizing for. So forgive me. My presentation today will be in English. I hope that is okay for everybody. If there's anything you would like me to explain, again, I can do so. But I'll spend the next 20 minutes or so discussing how Ukrainian banks can accelerate their digitalization activities. My name is Alex Kwiatkowski. We have my father to thank for my Polish name and my mother to thank for my English voice. The work that I do within Misys, my job title is there. I'm a senior strategist looking after banking and digital channels. Two things you need to know. Number one, I used to be one of you. I used to be a banker. I used to look after technology programs for one of the UK banks. The second thing you need to know is that before joining Misys, about 2.5 years ago, I worked as an industry analyst. I've spent the last maybe 12 years looking at developments around the banking industry from an analyst's perspective. I've also spent a very long time looking at things like mobile payments that we'll speak of in a moment. But what I'd like to talk to you today about is how we can accelerate digitalization in Ukraine. In his presentation, Levon has covered some of these remarks already, so I won't try to spend too much time repeating things you've already heard today. But in banking, there are 4 agents of change. There is the increased competition. So we can see new entrants coming towards the banking sector, interested in being disruptive, whether they are traditional banks or people like perhaps the mobile network community. We see the change in technology. We have access to mobile devices, to smartphones, but also to other parts of technology, things like analytics. The ability to allow customers to self-serve through a range of different channels. We have the change in consumer behavior, and we are all consumers, and so we can all recognize how we are changing the way in which we engage with banks, with retailers, with anybody that's providing a service to us. And we see change in regulation as well. There's lots of interesting regulation around the banking sector, all of which will have an impact here in Ukraine, specifically revolving around and regarding the digitalization of the sector. Because digitalization is exposing inefficiencies in every single industry. These will be familiar to everybody here. So where we go to a store and we find a closed sign, at some point, the mall just across the street has to shut its doors. But consumers, like my daughters, they want to keep shopping 24/7. We see the change in public transportation. Mayor Klitschko was a big believer in Uber, which is why if we open the Uber app, there are probably a half dozen, 6 cars just in the vicinity of the hotel and on the main street just outside. So we can see that Uber is transforming transportation. And we can see Airbnb. Right now, in Kyiv, there are 261 rooms, properties that I can choose right now if I want to spend the weekend here. So it's not that there are no rooms available. The Opera Hotel is lovely, but what I would also find is that I can go and stay, if I want to, in 261 rooms in an Airbnb scenario. So digitalization is changing everything that we see. What is the worst that can happen to digitalization? Well, it's this. If we look at the Fortune 500, big successful companies, since 1955, 88% of them have disappeared. That's quite dramatic. If you think of the sorts of names that were on the Fortune 500 back then, oil companies, car companies, manufacturers, 88% of them disappeared over 50, 60 years. But more significantly is this. which is since the year 2000, when the internet age really took hold, over half the companies on the Fortune 500 gone. So what I'm saying to you as a Ukrainian audience is do not assume that significant change can never come. Whoever thought that Britain would be crazy enough to leave the European Union? I didn't think we would ever do that, yet we've done it. Whoever thought that the US would ever elect the lunatic, the crazy man, Donald Trump to the White House? But they did it. So we must never think that change in our industry, in our country, cannot come, because we have evidence that says that it will. So there are three priorities for banking and digitalization. The first priority is this, and it's something which I recognize as a really valuable first step, and that is to simply be better, for everybody to become a better version of themselves in their bank. What does that mean? That means having the right processes, the right technology, the right people, in order to achieve the business objectives set by your leadership teams in order to meet the changing needs of customers, whether they're retail customers, whether they're small businesses, whether they're corporate customers. We have to have a solid foundation in place, and digitalization is no different. Once you've done that, you do this. You start to win. You start to win in a digitalized economy. And I already see signs of entrepreneurial activity in Ukraine, where app development taking place here is then being used in other markets for things like microcredit, for example. And once you've got better, once you've started to win in a digitalized economy, then you do this. You don't become a steampunk version of Abraham Lincoln. What you are able to do is this. Abraham Lincoln famously said that the best way to predict the future is to create it. So we can then start to take charge of our future, of our destiny. We can start to understand what customers really want. We use analytics for that. We start to use different channels to give them the services that they require. We use mobility for that as an example. We start to deliver them a transformed branch network, because digitalization does not mean the end of the branch. It just means that the branch will do different things in different ways. But the branch, and there are many of them just in this neighborhood, as I was walking last night, I see 6, 7 different branches. Maybe 4 or 5 of them will still be here. Because digitalization doesn't change the branch completely, it doesn't wipe it from the map. What we have to do is this, which is increase engagement via digital channels. So I spoke of the first priority, which is be better, because let's look at the starting point. This is some research from Finalta, looking at banks in a range of different markets, including Ukraine. And it's a hard-to-read chart from the front. It's even harder to read from the back. But let me explain. So what we see in this chart is the number of clients actively using online banking. And we can see that in Ukraine, it's substantially lower than in other comparable markets, whether it's the EU as a whole, places like Poland, the US, Czech Republic, UK, and Ireland. So there's a huge opportunity, and that involves getting people connected and, of course, accessing digitalized services. And we see something similar in mobile banking, whereby the Ukraine has a huge, not a problem, that is an enormous opportunity to digitalize and to start to offer new services via apps to the customers who require them, whether they're individuals, whether they're small businesses. So the beginnings, the foundations, requires increasing engagement in digital channels, because your customers want it, you are the ones who need to deliver it. This is the most important slide in my presentation. So if anybody wants to get their camera phones, please take a picture of this slide. This is all about Misys. This is all about what we can do for you. And this is a slide which was first published by McKinsey in February last year. It's very hard to read, so I will just explain it. Each of these elements, here, here, all across, are the parts that you need to deliver a sophisticated, digitalized experience to your customers. You need to have the ability to gain data-driven digital insights. That means having analytics, so you can understand in real time what is happening with your customers, what is happening with your services, with the products that you're offering. You need to have that fully integrated customer experience. It's very easy to talk about frictionless banking, a seamless experience. It's a little bit harder to do it. But there needs to be not just multi-channel, but omni-channel delivery. Online, mobile, social, the branch network, the contact center, and the ATM, all working in perfect harmony. There needs to be digital marketing. There may be people from the marketing department here today. We need to help you digitalize your marketing activities, getting the right offer to the right customer at the right time through the right channel. We also need to help you digitally enable your operations. Digitalization is not just the front office. It's not just interaction channels. Digitalization, as I will demonstrate, is the middle office and the back office as well. You have next generation technology. Most important, you do not have to do banking and technology in the way that you have always done it. One of my biggest frustrations when I worked for a bank was being told, Alex, that's a great idea, but we don't do it this way. That's crazy. There are so many great ways to do things that are now different than we've done in the past. Let's embrace them. Let's use things like cloud computing. Let's make greater use of a hybrid delivery model, not just using the same premise-based services and solutions as the past. We can offer you cloud. We can offer you integration to new technologies like smartwatches and other wearable devices. We can help you with your processes to make this technology work. And the most important thing on this slide is this. It's impossible to read, but this says the technology integration to the fintech ecosystem, which is meaning that you can take Misys technology and easily integrate it with the technology that you have already. It means that you are not having to waste the investment in previous technology, but you can also benefit from accessing new products and new services developed by the fintech community. A community which is growing here in Ukraine, where we've had things like the FinTech cluster from 2015, which says to me, FinTech is alive and well here in Kyiv. How can we help you to integrate new systems, new products, new services, new solutions to your bank? And look at this. If we do all of this correctly, and everything that Misys does is on the left-hand side of the slide, this is what you get. You will get a double-digit, 45% improvement in net profits from the impact of digitalization. So this is an improvement, a major improvement, which you can have maybe not tomorrow, because it takes a little bit of time to deliver, but you can certainly have within 12 or 18 months, because we're already helping clients to achieve savings like that and more. Because there are 3 pillars for success in banking, because you have 3 key groups to help. You have your customer, your regulator, and your investor. So I spoke earlier about digitalization not just being in the front office. You've already done some digitalization around your customer channels. You would have done some work around having mobile and online banking. Fantastic. Odlično. But let's do more. Let's digitalize in the middle office, where you can create new products and new services. Something I hear around the world. I've heard it in the CIS, I've heard it in Asia, I've heard it everywhere, which is we cannot deliver and develop new products and get them to market fast enough. We can help you deliver new products and services in days, not weeks and months. And then you can digitalize in your back office as well, where you do your risk management, where you are doing your core processing and your reporting for your regulator. In the past, these activities were discretionary. You could choose to do something around customer channels. You could choose to do something in the middle office. It was really essential you kept your core processing and your reporting working, but if you didn't do much with it, it wouldn't be disastrous. It would now, though, because this changes from discretionary and essential to essential and mandatory. There is no option. You have to invest in your customer interaction channels. You have to invest in your product factory, because if you do not, your competitor sitting next to you or outside this room, they will. And you have to keep your regulator happy by giving new manners and methods to process and report, to show that you are not a systemic risk. And if you do all of that, you'll keep Valeria Gontareva happy. You'll make her sleep well at night. Because she published this. I'm sure you've all read this or seen the text of the speech, but this is Madame Gontareva's document. This is her article on how she wants to fix the Ukraine's banking sector. She's given you a guide. Very interesting document when I read it. She talks about turning this ugly duckling into a swan. It's a nice way of describing what she wants to do. So she wants to see the end of oligarch banking. She wants to see deposits and lending, so we can see the economy being stimulated. Digitalization starts to play a role in all of these activities. It does so in increasing the transparency that the NBU is demanding. You cannot be transparent if you cannot report accurately, if you're not using analytics. There is a sense that the NBU will start to adopt a more macro-prudential approach to regulation. We've seen that in other parts of Europe. I've looked at prudential regulation for quite some time. It's great that the NBU are going to be doing that, but they can't do so in an analog world. It needs to be a world which is increasingly digitalized. We need to see improvements in corporate governance. We need to see a development of a risk management culture. And this last point, this is my last point before we move to the panel discussion, about how Ukraine's banks will digitalize and digitalize quickly. When I was reading the National Bank of Ukraine's website just recently, not just for this, but for something else that I'm writing, one of the things that I was interested in is how much the central bank is speaking about digitalization. And what I found was this. There was an interesting article that the NBU had published that was all about the shift, and Levon spoke about it in his presentation, I notice, is all about this shift to open banking, using APIs, using application program interfaces so that you can start to open up the previously closed banking system to take in new ideas, new technologies, new systems, new processes. You start to deliver that for 3 reasons. Because you keep your customer happy, because they have a level of service they have never seen before. You clearly keep your regulator happy because they're seeing transparency, improved capital adequacy, improved innovation. And lastly, you keep your investors happy because if you move to open banking and you digitalize, you can have that improvements in net profits, those improvements in the things like cost of equity versus return on equity. So to my mind, what you can do is this, is that you can connect to a new group of customers. You can most certainly innovate using some of the software that we have, and my colleagues are here, and we can demonstrate that software to you. We would love the opportunity to take that. And you can start to expand. You can expand your business into new territories, and you can expand your processes to things they have never done before. And if we do all of that, we're all going to be really happy, love our jobs, and do you know what? The world will be a slightly better place. That's all I had to say for now. So I think, Robert, we're going to have a panel discussion momentarily, and we can get into these topics. But for now, spasiba, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.